Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to look at lakes and all kinds of freshwater wet areas. So bogs and ponds and fishing lakes. We're going to see that they're caused by various ways. They can be fed and supplied in various ways. And they also have a great part to play in the ecosystem of living things, lots of different kinds of living things, including man. So let's look at some of the examples. If you think of a lake as simply being a collection of water in some kind of a low area, then any source of water above that lake can flow into that lake. If water is flowing in slower than it's flowing out, then the lake will dry up. If water is flowing in faster than it can flow out, then of course it can flood. And the perfect condition, I guess, would be as it flows out at the same rate that it flows in, and you have a large recreational lake. So sometimes landslides can form over a like a creek source, and then the water kind of piles up behind the blockage. It can be glutted by debris or by sediments that's deposited on it. In any way that once you have a valley or some kind of a depression that can hold water, you can have a pond and then eventually a lake. There are other kind of lakes formed by glaciers. We've looked at moraine lakes and cirque lakes and kettle lakes. All these are where it's carved down into the rock and left kind of a tablespoon into the stone, and then it's filled up with rainwater, and those are called glacier lakes. So this lake can change over time. So evaporation, especially if it's stagnant, where there's not water coming in, but yet water is going out by evaporation, it can go down. You can have times of flooding, and then over long periods of time, it depends on what's happening to the structure of the rock underneath that lake. It is possible that you could open up holes and then the lake can actually drain into underground rivers and underground reservoirs. So it really depends on a lot of factors as to what you're going to have in a lake over a long period of time. And in lakes is eutrophication. And eutrophication is when you have some kind of a drainage into that body of water that has lots of fertilizers in it. So usually nitrates, something that's high nutrients that will allow algae to grow. So if you have algae growing on the surface of the pond, it can actually steal away some of the oxygen from the fish and make it certainly not a nice looking thing, but also that it would be dangerous to the fish especially. If you have an area that is wide and wet, not normally a bowl that would cover a lot of water, but water that's over a low-lying region, but where the water is shallow over a large area, that is called a wetland. And there's different kinds of wetlands. You can have marshes and swamps and bogs and all kinds of fens, all kinds of different kinds that have different specific definitions. But wetlands are environments that are perfect for living things. Fish love it. Birds love it. They nest there. They feel safe there. Alligators like it in the South. It's a necessary part of the ecosystem, and there's a lot of living things that depend upon wetlands. People don't like wetlands. You can't build on it. You can't play golf on it. You can't have a mall on it. And so a lot of times we will drain these and take over the land because we consider it a worthless piece of real estate and we've developed it, but sometimes the cost is pretty high. So the different kinds, there's several different kinds of wetlands. So marshes are the first ones. Marshes have lots of tall reeds and cattails and grasses. Swamps can actually supply trees. So you can have trees that are not all dead trees, but actually some that are growing trees. Now, specific types of trees can grow in swamps, especially trees that can get their roots kind of up out of the water a little bit so that it doesn't rot them. Bogs and glades, a bog and a glade is rather the same, is really poor soil where it possibly was a lake at one time that's filled in and it's real soppy and the water can't get away. So the water's kind of trapped in a big sponge. And you end up with lots of peat. Peat is dead living things that's kind of just fallen in and kind of collapsed to the bottom of this marshy kind of mud. And then fens fens is kind of like a bog or a glade, but it is less peat and lots of different kinds of plants. Water quality is also important in wetlands because wetlands acts like a big filter. It traps out pollutants, it traps out sediments, it even traps out bacteria. And so you can, it's necessary for a living thing, even though that they're drastically reduced due to development, as I said.